What's up, everyone? Today, I'm joined by Kyle Kuciemba. He runs a consulting agency that specializes in sales tech, and we talk about artificial intelligence, marketing tools and technology, and how to streamline your business. I'm Jake Garay from the Garay team with Berkshire Hathaway, and you're listening to my podcast, Selling the Suburbs. I'm sitting down with real estate agents, investors, experts, and various professionals throughout the industry. On Selling the Suburbs, we're discussing the truth about real estate, entrepreneurship, and the ever-changing housing market. Yeah, no, but I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. It's long overdue.
Yeah, it's about time. I'm excited, but the timing is right now because now I actually have something that's more substantial since a change in my situation, which we'll cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, the timing's great now.
So tell us, for people who don't know you, take us to the beginning, right? Kind of like, what's your experience, your story, kind of like how you got to where you are today, what you've done, and kind of take us through that a little bit, because you've got a really interesting story, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you. I started my work actually caddying. If we talk golf, I started as a caddy. And my work history beyond sales and technology, which is what I'm in now and what I've been doing for many years, my story's always been one of service, right? And that started actually pumping gas at a gas station for tips, and then continued into caddying, and then continued into the restaurant industry as a teenager, and then becoming a restaurant manager at a young age in a very high-end restaurant in Westchester in Mount Kisco, and doing that for a number of years, where I really learned how to serve high net worth clients at a high level and really provide the level of service that somebody would expect. Mm-hmm. I then, right before 9/11, I ended up joining the Marine Corps and continuing my life of service, right, serving our country and signing up for that. But then going through Marine Corps boot camp and learning sort of this attention to detail that they focus on, that combined with my experience in service really gave me and shaped how I would operate in the future, and how I would serve other clients. Mm-hmm. And that today is still part of my philosophy, is always serving. And after my time in the Marine Corps, I ended up doing 2 tours in Iraq. After 9/11, so 2003 and then 04 to 05 during the Second Battle of Fallujah, I was there. When I got home, I got into sales. So almost 20 years ago, started in sales, life insurance and financial products, and did well there for a while. Actually did terrible in life insurance, but did very well in banking and financial products. And, you got to find your niche. And from there, I basically took some leave around the housing crisis, and around that time, the Marine Corps or the VA or the Department of Defense came out with a new GI Bill, the post 9/11 GI Bill, which allowed you to go back to school. And how the timing all worked out, I actually ended up homeless. Leaving banking and running out of money, and I was in a rough place. I was an alcoholic. I was drinking a lot. I was living in a tent with my dog in the woods, and I was selling all my possessions to get by. And I ran out of stuff to sell. My back was against the wall. I was kind of broken inside. I was mentally broke. My bank account, I was broke. And I started going to garage sales and flipping things. This was probably, 2010, 11, 12, around there. About 2010 was when this really started. And I ended up starting an e-commerce business. And that was when I first sort of broke the chains of my mentality that I had to have a job or I had to get benefits or something like that. This changed my mindset to, oh no, I could go out, I can do something and turn nothing into income. Mm-hmm. And I used that e-commerce business to help me get out of that situation, moved into a hotel, got my computer in there, started running inventory through the hotel, and I was just buying and selling stuff on the internet. And finally, some benefits kicked in, and that life improved. And I ended up going back into sales once I had my daughter. I lost that e-commerce business. I made some stupid decisions as a business owner, as a new business owner after a couple of years, and had to shut down. And I had my daughter around that time. And so I went back to a W-2 sales gig. But what was different was at that point, I always knew I wanted to work on something. I needed my next thing.
Side hustle.
Side hustles. So ever since then, I had a side hustle. I started multiple e-commerce things, print on demand, internet marketing, all of these skills really that I was building the skill set to end up where I am today, right? And so I went back into sales and continued my side hustles. And then eventually got sick of corporate sales and became a disability guy for the county to help veterans. So I really took a mix.
Went back into service.
Went back into service, serving others. I got sick of corporate sales. The corporate sales environment was just, there was too many tactics and all these things. And my sales philosophy is very Zig Ziglar-ish, right? And very solve problems and help and serve people.
Relationship based.
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy is build relationships, solve problems, and get paid. And that's my simple sales technique, right? And so I wasn't getting that in the banking and corporate financial sales area. So I left to go help serve my community. I did that for a couple of years. I ended up working at Social Security for a while. But I really missed entrepreneurial. I was still doing side hustles, but I missed the private sector. I missed selling to customers and solving their problems. And so I ended up getting recruited for a corporate sales job, a B2B sales role that blended disability inclusion and sales. And while there, I got back into technology on the sales side, right? Because as a sales rep, and I had been out of the game for a couple of years, and the game has completely changed in sales technology. And eventually what happened was that job came to an end after about 2.5 years, and I decided I could no longer work for anyone. It was time for me to do my own thing. And so we transitioned into an agency that I started in consulting for sales and sales technology. Mm-hmm. And what we do there, when I was at my job, I started leading projects where we would develop on Salesforce CRM and bring in developers to enhance the platform. And I was getting back into building systems for sales reps to just make the process easier. Naturally, I'm like a lazy salesperson, right? That's my nature. And it's, I'd rather not add notes to my CRM, right? I'd rather just talk to people, build relationships, solve problems, and get paid. That's all I want to do.
It's all the other stuff that detracts from you. It takes your time away. And that's real estate sales 101, right? Like paperwork and everything else is like what takes you away from doing what we really enjoy, which is stuff like this, talking to people and having conversations and solving problems.
100%. And so I'm on a mission to eliminate all of those tasks, or not eliminate them, but automate them. Mm-hmm. Through systems, through AI, through all the new tech that's available for us. And really the market has changed incredibly over 5 years in the tech space since I had switched sales roles. And so now having the ability to implement the tools that I want to implement, mm-hmm. has allowed me to build these systems of cold outreach, of follow-up, just being able to use systems like Otter AI or these Fathom AI, these recording platforms for Zoom calls, because all my calls are remote, mm-hmm. right, with Zoom. And the Fathom recorder will record the whole thing. It'll transcribe the sales call, and it will give me notes. It will give me action items. So if I made a commitment in the call, like, oh, I'll email that to you,
yep.
right? And then you forget about it.
Yep.
Like, I don't have to worry about that. It's just all there for me.
Yeah.
And so using that tool now has freed me up. I don't have to take notes during a call. I don't have to worry I'm going to miss something. Mm-hmm. And
You can be more engaged.
Yeah. And what it's doing is turning me into a super salesperson.
Right.
I'm trying to build the like RoboCop of salespeople, which RoboCop might be a bad reference now. I don't know. Did they have a remake yet? Because a whole generation might not get that, but like a mech robot, right? This tech enhanced sales rep who is automated and who's leveraging AI, who's not spamming people, right? Who doesn't have to cold call, right? Those days are challenging, and I mean, I used to enjoy parts of cold calling, but there's a lot of it that is just not fun, and people don't enjoy it, right? And the other end doesn't like it. The people on the other end don't like it.
And there's kind of like over time, it's like when email first came out. You could email someone, and they'd respond because they'd only get a couple emails.
Yeah.
Now, how many emails a day do you get? There's a diminishing return on that over time, and phone calls, I feel like, how many times a day does your phone ring? And if it's an unknown number, you don't want to answer it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why it's just not an effective technique. And this is why we lean heavily on social. Social media really has proven to be a fantastic playground for organic lead generation. And I have systems that I've worked with the developer to now offer. And what they do is they streamline this process of lead gen on social media for people who are putting up posts that are opt-in posts, something like, hey, we recorded a new podcast, drop a comment if you want early access, right? And then people who comment, we're able to just load all those people into our system, automate the DM that goes to them, and set up these systems that get people to raise their hand on social media through attractive marketing, through different techniques like opt-in posts, engagement posts. And then we're really the only system that lets you load those individuals directly into a CRM and then manage them down a pipeline. So heavily, I've specialized now in the organic social media lead gen because it's such a powerful tool. It's an area, just like you said, when email kind of came out, people responded and stuff. And yes, people are on to cold DMs, right? These spammy DMs, which makes it very easy for us to circumvent that and not sound like that, right? So I like to say we do, organic social media lead gen without the spam, without the cold calls, and help you get more leads and close more deals through these platforms. It's really been an amazing ride. We started this agency just a couple of months ago, and we've gotten a good number of clients already signed up. We have a lot of prospects in our pipeline, and every day we're improving the product. And so today I actually talked to the developers, and we're going to be integrating conversational AI into our CRMs, which I already have it in one, but this social media CRM we're going to add it to. And that's really going to open up what we can do. For instance, I have tools now that will do cold outbound DMs on your personal profile, which I don't have my black hat, but I usually, when I talk about this stuff, I'll put my black hat on because some of these techniques are against terms of service, right? And could potentially risk your accounts. But we use techniques to avoid that. And we don't have a lot of problems if you use it correctly. The problem is when people get greedy and they want to start sending hundreds of messages instead of 20. But we run these bots that will do a cold outreach with a pre-programmed sort of message, a very lighthearted, hey, quick question, do you use social media to get organic leads, right? And it's just an engagement question. You just want them to respond. Once the response happens, depending on the client's choice and how they want to operate, we can either just hand that off, or we can ask a couple of questions and then pass it off into something else, or we can totally engage this individual with an AI bot back and forth, and the bot is trained to schedule an appointment. So essentially what we are doing are creating artificial intelligence setters, right? Except they're operating on social media. It's pretty wild stuff.
How, since you started this and you said in the last 5 years, even you're seeing the technology changing, how quickly is it changing, right? Like, where do you see this 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now? Because it seems like since AI, almost like the switch was flipped, with ChatGPT, and it went very mainstream. And I know people have been working on it for a long time, but it's become so much more accessible.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to see a lot of noise in the marketplace, depending on where you are. I talk to people out here and I show them some very basic stuff. And when I say out here, I say like in the real world, right? Not the internet world.
Right. Not the people who are living in that environment every single day.
Yeah, because my bubbles and my groups that I'm a part of, everyone's using this stuff.
I'm laughing because last week when we got together, I was like, where are you finding this stuff,
Yes.
right? Like, what communities are you in that you're learning about this? Because you've got, laundry lists of different tools and assets that you can implement. And I'm like, I don't see this stuff every day. Like, I feel like I'm unplugged from a lot of those systems and communities. So it's
because I like to see myself as a problem solver. So every time, and because I'm lazy, every time I come into a problem, I want to find a way to solve it permanently and automate it. I don't want to have to just keep on going back.
Yeah, eliminate inefficiencies.
Yeah. And so what I'll do is that when I find a problem, I either seek the solution or I seek the person who knows the solution. And in these online communities that I've just become a part of and continue to grow in, I'm able to make those connections and find these developers and build these relationships, which also, and that's what I'm good at, right? As I've built this business, I've started to learn more about the things that I enjoy doing and the things that I don't enjoy doing, and where my talents lie versus where they don't, and solving those problems versus developing the solution, finding the solutions of the people who've developed it, making a deal with them to then offer it and sell it on, for me, for my business, has been the skill set that's really proven to be valuable in this. But hold on, wait, actually, let me answer that question because I got off on a tangent. And where I see things going, I'll start with the fact that I started in AI not too long ago, but before ChatGPT came out. I was working on a sales software that would analyze language transcripts of sales calls and would provide feedback.
I remember that.
Yeah, provide feedback on the sales call. And then what happened, ChatGPT came out, and a couple of things happened actually with the founder that were unrelated, but ChatGPT almost made the system where anyone could do that, right? And so at the flip of a switch, you eliminated almost a whole product. As ChatGPT gets better and all these tools are developed, you're eliminating entire industries sometimes.
So that's how much of AI that we see today is going to be cannibalized by itself, right? Because as these products come out, like for example, CRMs, a lot of CRMs are designed, even though there's similar sales processes, they're designed for specific industries.
Yes.
But then you get crossovers where it's like, okay, I've got a CRM that interacts with my social versus my website based versus my whatever, right? You've got different platforms, and a lot of the time, and we talked about this even with our business in real estate, a lot of the inefficiencies are in the lack of communication between the tools that we use.
Yes.
Or they don't work efficiently, or they don't work properly. How much of this is, as these new tools are coming out to connect these things, they're going to connect, and then something else is going to come along and eliminate the entire need for it whatsoever.
I
right?
mean, that's the evolution of it all, and that's how it will play out. The interesting thing is that, for instance, we're using AI to create more AI.
Right.
And we've set up, in fact, our bots. One of the bots that I use is probably it is the best bot I've found in the marketplace. I've used a number of them. And one of the beauties of it is it uses AI to build itself. So the way the engineer developed it was we explain what we want it to do, who it is, how it's supposed to operate, and then it'll create the logic tree that is deeper than most of these other bots by using itself. So it uses AI to build itself.
When you say lose itself, meaning like it's learning as it's going.
Yeah, sort of. It's more of it's creating. It's so in order to create it, you have to create prompts to tell it what to do.
Right.
Well, we've created prompts to build the prompts.
So the prompts lead to more prompts.
Yes. So it builds
kind
itself.
Of
It's like
it snowballs.
Yeah, and so it kind of gives birth to itself, and we're easily able to replicate something or then give it a new mission. For instance, if we're working in one niche, real estate, and we develop a bot who's very good at setting appointments, right? We can replicate that and just change the, tell it to just change the industry, and then feed it more data about that industry, and now it's easily replicated, right? And so but beyond that, in the back end, these bots still need logic. They still need some sort of logic tree to work down, because if you use and you can tell, ask a bot if you're out here, and if you want to talk about what the future is going to be, everyone's going to be using these things, but they're not all created equal.
Right.
And so if you want to test them, like say something stupid to it, like I like dinosaurs, right? Or bake me a cake, or what's a recipe? Something random, right? And an untrained, weak system is going to give you feedback on that. It's going to give you, oh yeah, you like dinosaurs? I like dinosaurs too. What are you talking about? This is real estate. We're trying to get an appointment here.
Right.
So our bot, for instance, will be like, oh, that's great. Let's get back on topic.
I see.
And it'll ask an engaging question to elicit an answer, and that answer is actually building a form in the back end of our CRM.
I see.
So, for instance, we could conversationally through DMs. In fact, do you have your phone? Go ahead and scan this QR code.
Got a live demo going on here. I just turned on the camera. Okay.
Now this...
talk to my assistant.
Yep. Go ahead and push the button that says talk to my assistant, and that should open up Facebook Messenger.
This is a terrible example because I'm still locked out of my Facebook.
I knew that was going to happen. So if you had
it takes you to the
Messenger,
Facebook Messenger bot.
Yep. Or what we can actually do, we can run it through text message and all that. It's not set up on this one, but are you in there somehow?
No.
All right, no worries. You could actually do it on mine. Go ahead and just ask it a question. Just what are your services? Now this one hasn't been trained on my CRM backend. I have another bot who will tell you all about our CRM. It'll give you prices and all that stuff. So these are as good as you train them. So businesses that have a lot of SOPs, like, need to implement AI now. If you have written SOPs, if you have trainings, if you need to train employees, if you need a FAQ.
When you say SOPs, for people who don't know.
Yeah, standard operating procedures for your business, or even if you just have a lot of well laid out content.
I don't know if the internet is here or not.
Oh, yeah. But anyone who has like a lot of written content, a lot of valuable data, unique data sets, when you throw unique data sets at some of this technology, you're able to extract incredible insights.
It's kind of like collecting raw materials before you know what to even do with it, and then this will help you figure out what to do with that information.
Right now, we're focused on the back end in collecting as much data as possible, and we have no idea what we're going to use it for yet.
But once you have it, you figure it out.
You figure it out.
Well, it's kind of like you don't know what you need until you need it.
Yeah.
And then once you have it, then you can figure out what you want to do with it.
If we can collect it, we want it.
Right. Now, question for you, because you mentioned something before. Someone's listening. They're trying to figure out, like you said, as you've been going through this process, you've been able to identify the things that you're really good at and, your strengths, but also your weaknesses. What are the best ways someone can do that, right? So if someone's like, hey, I want to start to do some of this stuff, but I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know, like, how did you do that? How did you go through that? And I know some of it is experience, but, it was obviously intentional.
No, I sat down because basically I was going to lose my job. And I had to sit down and say, okay, I wrote it out. I wrote down what I liked doing. I wrote down what I hated doing. Mm-hmm. That was a big one. And I go through that exercise with a lot of people who are asking that same question. What should I do? How should I do this, or what should I do? And then I ask them, well, what do your passions and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of times they struggle with that. So I say, okay, what are the things you hate doing? Mm-hmm. What are the things you don't like? What's the past job that you hated? What about it was it that you hated? Was it the leadership? Was it the processes? Was it the bureaucracy? Just start writing out those things that it's likely that something that you really like is something that you're good at.
Makes sense.
So in the sales process, if I'm going to analyze everything that needs to be done, and one of the best ways to do this is to just track everything on your calendar. If you sit down to do social media posts, just put that on your calendar from 8 a.m. to 8:30 social media posts. If that's a thing that you're enjoying, then you keep that on your calendar. Mm-hmm. If this is something that needs to be outsourced or switched out to somebody else, then we switch that out. If it needs to be dug deeper, okay, I like writing the post, but engaging in the comments is not something that I enjoy doing, or whatever that may be. You gotta think it out. You have to slow down and say, okay, is this something I enjoy doing? Is this something that I'm good at? Mm-hmm. Is this something worth my time? That's the other thing, is time value. Right? I love doing video and all that kind of stuff, but for me, the value isn't there for my time. Therefore, whenever I can, let's outsource it. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for the systems engineering on my back end. I love building new systems, but client fulfillment is not something I want to do. So I have a team member who specializes in this, and now I can leverage that person not only for the ability to outsource a task, but also leverage their experience, because guess what? They're smarter than me in some of this stuff. Right. So, lean on them and learn from what they can do and grow from there. So yeah, that's kind of, you got to write it out, and you got to really think, stop and think every time you're doing something, whether it's part of your job or your daily routine. Is this something I should be doing?
Right.
And does it make sense? And am I good at it?
And kind of piggybacking on that, because I've seen some of the things that you're doing, and I also know, because a lot of the time people say like, oh, there's these great systems, you got to implement them. A lot of the work is done to set, it's a lot of it is setting it up, right? It's like you said before, if you have a lot of standard operating procedures, have you even documented those, right? Because a lot of the time people are like, oh, AI is great, there's all these tools, I want to use them, but then you get the tool and you're like, it's not really adding any value because you haven't systematized the process for your business that you even want that to take over yet, right? So I feel like a lot of it is taking the time to be like in my business, okay? You get a call, someone wants to sell their house. Now what, right? Like, what does that process look like? And do you have that process documented so that you can systematize it and say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an appointment. Then we're going to put together a bunch of information. We're going to just do information gathering. Then we're going to pull comparable sales. Then we're going to prepare all of our marketing materials. Then we're going to put it all together in a presentation. And then we're going to meet with them. Okay, now you met with them. Now what's the next step? You get the listing, and what's that process look like? Everybody in the business may know what that process is for them, and everybody's process is a little bit different. But have you taken the time to actually document it and write it down? Because otherwise you can't even, if you don't have that memorialized, you can't look for the inefficiencies to improve.
And you can't communicate it to anybody else. if it's all in your head, right? My mentor hounds me about this because I'm terrible. Again, I'm lazy by nature. And so sitting and writing. So what I have to do is, but I love to talk. So I just use technology, and I just use the talk to transcribe, and I just spit out everything in my head. And then I run it through AI to clean it up.
Talk about that process. So take your phone, you start talking. What are you talking into?
Yeah, actually, I usually will do just desktop Google Docs.
Okay.
And just they have a feature for the microphone to transcribe, and I just talk.
So you're just talking to your computer, all of it, and then you put it into an AI tool that'll kind of clean it up and figure out where you're going with it.
Well, that's the thing. And even if I'm typing, I do that because my brain may not logically organize everything, and then it may also not realize that the audience doesn't, maybe I'm missing something for the audience, and the AI will put it in a logical step. It's very good at frameworks.
Yeah.
I don't love how it writes usually until you train it very well. Right. But it does a very good job of processing that data. And you don't even have to use Google Docs. You could just record a video, upload it privately to YouTube, take the transcription from YouTube, feed that into ChatGPT, and do that.
That's interesting. And I think that's what you just said is interesting too, in the sense that you're going to this tool, it's completely unbiased, right? In the sense that we were just talking to a couple members of my team. A lot of the time in sales, you may have a conversation in 10 or 15 variations, but 100 times, right? Like I've gone on hundreds of listing appointments. So I've had similar conversations on every single one of those appointments. So you go into that appointment with certain biases, right? Like earlier today, we were talking about, negotiations when you're trying to earn business. Sometimes it's commission, sometimes it's price. But at the end of the day, almost every seller I've ever worked with, it doesn't even come down to the commission that you're charging or the price that you're telling them that their home is worth. It's usually if they feel comfortable with you and they feel like you're competent to actually represent them. And if they've identified that you're the person that they want to work with, then they will tell you, hey, I want to work with you, but I want the commission to be this, or I want to list the home at this. Like if they truly want to work with you, they're not going to just hire someone else only because they were charging a 0.5%. They'll give you the opportunity to say yes or no, I can work with you on that. But a lot of the time, people, especially newer agents, go into these appointments and they think that that's what gets it done. And they say, oh, I lost the listing because I told them their house was worth $700 and they wanted $750, right? Or, oh, I wouldn't do, a commission at 4% and I told them it was 5%. You know what I mean? And in reality, if they really truly wanted to work with you, they'd come back to you and say, hey, Kyle, look, I love what you have to, offer. I love the services that you provide. You're the guy I want to work with. But listen, I really want to list my house at $750. Do you think that we could work something out and have a conversation about the price? Right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the way you want it to work out. You do want them to be able to come back to you. One of the things I think in those situations is that those are just excuses.
Yeah.
And it's just, and people are going to buy it and they're going to sell it to themselves. The sales rep's going to sell it to themselves that was the excuse. But the reality is they failed to really set up that relationship, to open it up where the client or the prospect could come back to you and say, hey,
right.
So you've got to be able to do that work on the front end to make sure that the relationship is open enough where they're going to be like, well, that's not a good enough, I can't work with that commission, but I'd like to work with you.
Right. And then the other piece, basically where I was going with that is that's the biases that we in real estate have, right? So you meet with buyers, you think that they're not going to work with you because of your commission rate, that you have to, they have to pay this or whatever. So you go in with preconceived biases of what the deficiencies are. And so with marketing, you kind of have the same thing, right? Like a lot of the time marketers are looking at what does the person want to hear and not necessarily what is the best way to communicate this message. So when you have like a third party, like a lot of the time what I'll do with my team is when I have a new team member come on, I'll have them just be a fly in the wall in our meetings. And afterwards, I'll ask them like, what do you think of this? As an outsider, completely unbiased, you haven't been doing this. You don't have the blinders.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're hearing that don't make sense to you? How can we more effectively communicate this to you as a brand new person, right? Like the old saying, explain it to me like I'm 5. ChatGPT and AI kind of allows you to take that long write-up, that system, whatever it is, and say, this is how in my head I think this process should go because this is how I've done it for 10 years. And then you have this completely unbiased resource that says, well, I actually think it should be this because I have all this information and this is more logical and simpler and more efficient. And then you can look at it and say, okay, I never thought of it that way because you had those blinders on the whole time.
Yeah. And, there's ways now. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, we don't even need, if you record that meeting, for instance, this was the software that we were working on. It was designed before ChatGPT came out. It had been designed to determine the ineffective and the effective people in the room on a meeting. You can literally record and transcribe the meeting, boom, feed it into AI, and you can ask it to, tell me who throws off the flow of the meeting, right? And they'll be able to look. The system can look and give you recommendations, and depending on how well trained the system is or what system you're using, it may be not the best data, but you can do it. And I think one of the best use cases is that simplifying and getting like just dumping data into it and getting something out. But we're really using, the way that we're using the systems, I think I was going to tell you earlier and I held off. I've got some systems now running, right? Or I did show you the commenting system, right? So we have the AI system that goes out and comments on people's Facebook posts automatically. What it'll do is it'll read the post and it'll generate a comment related to whatever's in there, and it'll post it. It'll also look at the number of likes, ha-has, loves, cares, and it'll pick the best option, and it'll go ahead and do that for you too. And why we do this engagement is we're trying to improve our algorithm so that all these additional people will see our content, right? Because so often, you only see like 10% of the content of all your followers and all the people that are with you or that you're friends with. So how do you get more people to see it? Well, you engage them. So we're replicating real life engagement and tricking the system, and it works really well.
Yeah.
And now what I've added engagement questions. So now we're looking to do deep engagement, multi-level, and what it's doing. And now we're looking at, okay, building relationships, solving problems, getting paid. This is the building the relationship part. Oftentimes I'll just go back in. I ask the engagement question, they reply. Now I go back in and I reply.
Right.
And then if it makes sense, boom, I hit them in the DM. Hey, I'd love to talk about your systems.
Right.
And we start conversations. And that's how we're growing this business. We eat our own dog food, right? Which I don't know if I've talked to you about that one, but it's not a common phrase. But it means that, we use our own system.
Right. You actually use the things that you're selling.
Yes.
Internally.
And it works. So, and do you know, eat your own dog food is from, I want to say it was the 50s.
That's a great
Gary V uses it all the time. I think that's why I use it.
Never heard him say that.
But from the 50s, it was like the CEO of Alpo actually ate the dog food on a commercial. To show that it was like, safe for humans. But anyway, so we use our own systems to grow our business on social, and that engagement tool is one of them. We do some cold DMs with the auto repliers, and then we run the CRMs on the back end with these AI bots. It's really what's out there, and for these use cases and for the audience, if you're thinking, okay, well, this is really cool, but I don't know how it would work on, in my business. Some of the popular use cases in the services industry, right? You have we've discussed this before. Speed to lead is so important, right? If somebody calls a contractor and they don't get an answer,
They're calling somebody else.
they're calling someone else. And so we build in automated text backs so that if you miss the call, boom, they instantly get a text message. Hey, I'm just on the other line, or, would love to talk to you. Or we plug an AI bot in and we create we train it to ask questions and book a call and act like a setter. And then you can even set up live transfer. So if you'd like to be if you'd like to just talk to somebody, someone's available now, and you send it to another number or something like that. So we can build all these systems out. So that's great for the service industry, HVAC, plumbers, electricians, contractors, because that speed to lead is so important. They're just going to, if you don't answer and they can't get in touch with you, there's next, no matter how many reviews you have.
Yeah, no. And at the end of the day, it's just easier to just be on your phone and just scroll next person.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's amazing tech. I'm excited to be in this industry. We're really seeing, what that future is going to hold. It's going to be, a lot of people are going to be out there pushing this stuff. I recommend you look into it and test these systems and, start thinking about the future. And the future is going to revolve around, if you're going to implement this technology, which you're going to need to, you're either going to adapt or die. It may, in some industries, it just may take a lot longer, but look at the agent who's relying on, old school methods.
They're a breed that's becoming extinct. And we were just talking about this because it's like saying in 1995, I don't want to be on the internet.
Right. I don't want a website.
Because I get a lot of agents who will come to me. I'll be asked to talk about video marketing and social media marketing, content creation, that type of stuff. And they're like, yeah, that's like your thing, but it's not really my thing. And I try to drive into agents' heads that it's not really a choice. This is part of the business now, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to, and they're going to be doing it when you're not. And that's going to put them at a competitive advantage. Especially in my business, there's a lot of agents. It's a very easy business to kind of fake it till you make it, right? There's a lot of people whose perception is more important than the reality. So they can perceive themselves as this top producing agent who sells a bunch of real estate, when in reality, they don't sell any houses, they don't have any clients, but it seems like they're always doing business. And then what ends up happening is people gravitate to this person who's giving this perception. And then ultimately, because of the lack of transparency and the lack of the industry being like, hey, here is Tom, and Tom sells 50 houses a year. These are the communities he works in, and being transparent, they kind of don't share that info. And that opens the door for the perception that other people are doing it. And so because of social media and because of video, that gives you the opportunity to speak directly to the consumer, to tell them what you're doing, to tell them what you're about, and to be honest and transparent and open about what you do and where you do it and everything else like that. And if you don't do that, right, then somebody else is going to. Somebody else will grab the attention of your client. In real estate, they say it takes the average, buyer, seller about 12 to 15 months to decide if they actually want to move. And once they decide, it only takes them 3 days to pick who their agent's going to be. So that means that they may be on the fence thinking about this 12, 15 months, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it is. If you're there in month 1, great. But if you don't follow up, if you don't stay top of mind, if you're not there in month 12 or month 15, guess what? They're not going to think of you in those 3 days. They're going to pick whoever they call on Zillow, whoever they go to the open house, whoever they look up on Google, whoever they see a social media video on. So you have to stay in front of the consumer. AI is the next progression of this, right? It was like, the internet was out, and that was the first thing. That was the first real accessible tech that was there for people to start to leverage. Then it became social media, because social media, internet was like the way to reach the consumer. It was the way to have tools. And it created more efficiency in business, right? So now an agent who is selling maybe 10 to 15 houses a year, with the power of email, cell phones, having your phone on you and everything else, you can write offers on the road. You can call your clients on the road versus what it used to be, which was pay phones and MLS books. Now you can pull up listings instantaneously, so you can transact much quicker. So there was the internet, that was number one. Then marketing was innovated via social media, and that was like the next thing. And then AI is going to kind of be the big one that has a little bit of everything. But what we've seen in our industry is a consolidation at the top. So in 1980 or 1960, you couldn't have an agent who was selling 175 homes by themselves. That would be so insanely difficult because, how would you do that without internet, without the ability to answer phone calls on the road, right? And to be able to be there face to face when that client is ready to transact. So what we've seen is the reason that the industry is shrinking in a numbers of in the number of agents is because now there are top producers who can handle that type of business. And AI is going to take that agent who's selling 50, 100 houses a year and enable to sell 200 houses a year, because then all they're going to be doing is meeting with people. The paperwork's going to be seamless. The offers, everything else, you'll be able to just talk to your phone and say, write this, do it, send it to this person, boom, done. It's only a matter of time before we get there. So the people who are really good at the other thing, which is the thing that we both talked about earlier, loving, is like the face-to-face interaction and building rapport and getting people to understand, and how really what it ultimately I think boils down to is how good you are at communicating what you do to the consumer in a simple way, right? Because if you can communicate what you do to the customer in a simple way that they feel is they're more, your values align with theirs, they're going to work with you. And if you can't communicate that, I always say confused buyers don't buy, right? And when you're a seller, you're still buying the services of that agent. So if you're confused about what I do, you're not going to work with me. And so the agents who are really good at that will be able to do it at scale even more, because there's going to be all this tech that's going to take away the time that I'm out writing, paperwork for all of my deals, right? If I'm working on 15, 20 deals at a time, that's hours and hours a week of paperwork that goes away.
But when we can automate those systems, those processes, use technology to simplify and streamline, it's a game changer.
And then
you're creating that super agent.
And then it becomes exponential, right? Because I can go and I could cold call 50 people, or I could create one video that reaches 5,000 or 50,000. So now I'm creating scale. And the same thing, where now what ends up happening is, how as a solo agent, new to the business, are you going to go and compete with someone who's selling 150 houses a year? If they interview two people, how are you going to win that business? You've got to be really good at positioning yourself as a counterbalance to whatever it is that they're doing. Like, for example, when I got in the business, teams were just starting, and I used to sell against teams all the time where I'd say, oh, if you hire a team, then you're not going to get that big team lead. You're going to get somebody else that they're going to assign the file to, and you're not really ever going to get that face-to-face interaction, right? And that's how I would sell against a team. I'd be like, no, I'm your guy. I'm going to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm going to pick up the phone for you no matter what it is. Now, 10 years later, my approach to the business is very different, where now I'm selling against that. Where
screw that new guy. Teams are the way to go.
Where it's like, hey, well, guess what? That person, that's great if everything goes smoothly. But if an issue comes up, they're not going to know how to handle it. I've sold 300 homes in the last 5 years and can tell you exactly what's going to come up, how to address that issue. And if I don't, my partner's going to know. Between us, we've got over 4,500 career sales. So it's like, how do you compete with that level of experience? And so everybody's got to identify what is my way to sell against that. But, that's where the scale comes in, because then you're going to see even more consolidation at the top, because people can just handle. It used to, like, when you had a top agent, there was other agents that could kind of get the fallout business, right? Because they would pick and choose who they were going to work with, because they could be super selective. But now, if they're able to handle more, they'll just take it all. Why give away business if you can handle it still anyway, and everything else is streamlined and efficient? So it's going to become that much more consolidated as this technology grows and grows. And the people who are like, no, I'm not going to learn it. They'll be out of business in 5 years.
Yeah, no, it's the reality. You see it in your industry. I mean, those who have I go to the supermarket and there's a girl who has her face on she's an agent. not on the bench. Well, basically it's like the
shopping
bench,
cart.
but on the shopping cart, right? And I'm just looking at it like, man, how much does that cost? First off, right? Social media is free until you're advertising or you pay for your blue check, which I recommend. And other than that, it's free, right? And so across all social channels, I don't know, maybe I have like 10,000 followers, and that's 10,000 people I can get in front
your
of
community
for free, just by putting information out there.
But people who already opted in, right? It's not cold.
No, these people have raised their hand. They like
like you.
Yeah,
that's 10,000 people that like you.
Yeah.
It's not just 10,000 people.
Enough, at least, to follow me.
Enough to be, or they're
I piss them
interested,
off.
or maybe they hate you and they want to, but there's a time and place for that too.
I mean, it doesn't matter, it's just, and you can't care about that, right? When you get into this game of social, I'll never forget my first YouTube video. I actually got like 20,000 views back when it was easy. And I got my first negative comment, and they made fun of my fingers. They said I had sausage fingers. And I'll never forget that comment. That was like a negative, like, man. But then I was like, I do have sausage fingers, so I was fine with it. But you got to get over that. Like, if you're going to let something like that eat you up, it's a difficult game to play.
And I think everybody goes through that when they're starting.
You have to.
Because it's like, it's hurtful, and it's like, it's bringing up like probably things that happened when you were younger and kids were making fun of you in school and all that other stuff. But it's like, at the end of the day, what the hell are you going to do about it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it's true, it's true, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not, then why do you care?
Right.
So
why do you care that guy cares?
Right. Exactly. And not to mention my favorite
Johnny Baseball 214, right, on the internet doesn't like my fingers. What do I care?
And at the end of the day, 99.9% of the time, the people that post comments hating, you go to their profile, they don't even have a profile picture. They don't post anything. They're like a ghost account that they just go on just because they, enjoy going and shitting on people.
The reality is most of them are just hurting themselves a lot. In fact,
they're unhappy people.
They are. There was an instance once, because I love interacting on social and meeting new people. And there was a guy who was posting all these negative comments on someone's profile. And I'm like, so I reached out to him. Like, hey man, are you okay? Something along those lines. And he opened up and he was broken. This guy was like, his girl left him. He was almost homeless. He had no purpose in life. He was in his 30s. I ended up convincing him to go to Ukraine and fight in the war. I don't know if he said he was going to do it. But I don't know. I didn't follow up. But it was one of those conversations, because I was in the Marine Corps, so we talked about purpose, and and he felt drawn to that conflict. So it wasn't like playing.
You weren't just like, yeah.
I'm not like, oh, you should go fight and die for another country. No, it was like something he kind of wanted to do, and but he was broken, and that was the point, right? Is that he was making all these real comments, but the reality was he was the most broken of anybody that we were talking about. So you can't take that stuff seriously. You cannot let it stop you, right? When my dad died, that was the point when I really stopped giving a crap what other people thought, right? It was just at that point, life is too short to worry about what someone else is going to think. And so if that is holding you back on social, don't let it. You just can't.
I know, and you're spot on. But for people for someone who's in business, and I honestly, truly believe, and maybe you feel differently, but you're a wealth of knowledge in the tech space with these tools and systems and automation. Every time we talk, you have a ton of great insight into, even just like you said before, how do you identify your strengths and weaknesses? How do you implement an actual system? Right? Because everybody, it's so funny, because you talked earlier, like, Zig Ziglar approach and all this stuff, and like Gary Vee, and there's a lot of like threads of, those self-development type people who are really teaching entrepreneurship and business and everything. And as you get into it more and more, like I always say, like the whole Gary Vee document, don't create, for like 7 years, I was like, what the hell does he mean by that? Right? Like, how the hell do you do that? Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you do that? And now it makes total sense, right? Like you just find things that you're doing daily in your business and just film it and figure out what the hell. Like you said before, like my whole content strategy has been like just trying things and then just finding out what you can use. Like you said with data, right? It's like once you have it, you'll figure out what to do with it. Content's kind of the same thing, where you're like, if you just have it, you'll repurpose it or find a way, and then you find threads and you figure out how to use it.
Especially because it's hard to know what's going to hit. Right. I write posts sometimes and I'm like, this is gold. This is going to crush. Man, this is a golden like post, and I'll put it up and it's just crickets. And then I'll put something stupid up.
And people love it.
People love it. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm reminded I don't really know what I'm doing here.
So my question is, how do people find you and how do people work with you?
Yeah, usually the easiest way to actually get in touch with me is finding me directly on Facebook and messaging me. That's Kyle Kuciemba, K-U-C. Well, you'll have a link.
Yeah.
But my business is the SpartaAgency.com. And you can go to that link, fill out the form. Right now, it's just a form. I have my engineers building out a little more of a site there. But you can reach out to us. And the way I work is I just do consultation. Not sure if any tools that I know of are right for you. Mm-hmm. Just like when we went over your CRM, right? It makes the most sense in your situation to continue using that system to maximize the capabilities of the system you've already invested in, that you're already built in. And then we can just look at other ways to complement that to fill out what you want to do.
Right.
And one of the easiest ways to understand, too, what you want to do is something we mentioned before, is just write out what you would love to be able to do, right? And so when you write out your process and you look at it and you say, okay, well, when we look at that, then we can look at it and say, okay, now we can start automating. But you've got to kind of write it out in plain English, and then we can program systems to automate that stuff. So it's great stuff. Reach out to me on the website. Facebook's a great way to get in touch with me. I'll give you the links so you can put them in the in any of the notes, and we'll roll like that.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely have to do this again, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Dude, this
has been great.
This is great, and we're documenting here, right? I mean, we should just not talk for the next couple of months, and then we'll just plan. catch up, and just do it on camera.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm just not going to talk to anybody unless they're on camera.
Unless they're on camera. Just be like, hold it for the cast.
That's it.
Hold it for the pod.
That's it. So, no, but thank you again, and we'll do it again.
My pleasure. Great setup you guys got going on here, and yeah, you're crushing. I love watching you do it. Yeah, I'm here to help anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm excited to see what you're doing with this agency. It's going to be big, I think.
Oh, yeah. We're a rocket.
That's it.
All right, brother.
Cool.
Thanks, man.